Welcome aboard the Bitcoin Express. My name is Chase. Let's get to it. Heart surgery and cryptocurrency. What do they have to do with each other? In today's video, I will explain, and by the end, you will definitely understand the point that I'm trying to get across today. And to do this, I'm going to tell you a story, probably one of the greatest stories you never heard of. And by the end, you'll see the connection to cryptocurrency. But even the story alone, without making any connection to cryptocurrency, the story in itself is truly remarkable. And I think that you will find it to be very amazing. So let's get right to it. It's story time. This man on the screen, this is Vivien Thomas. He is a very famous man in the medical community. Of course, he's passed away. He lived in the 1920s, 1930s era, and he is a surgical technician. Very big in the community, but he was just a surgical technician. How did this come to be? Well, let's start with the history, or where he grew up, the origins of Vivien Thomas. So Vivien Thomas, he was born in Lake Providence, Louisiana in 1910. And if you can see the article in front of me, they say Dr. Vivien Theodore Thomas. So although he wasn't a doctor, he didn't have a degree, they still give him that respect, right? So in high school, he went to Pearl High School in Nashville. He graduated with honors in 1929. Always an excellent student, a very smart man. So he said, I want to become a doctor. Of course, right? But there was a problem. He was living around the time of the Great Depression, so the stock market crash came and the whole economy went down. So it just wasn't a good time for him to go to medical school. So he said, I'm just going to keep my money in the bank. I'm going to save it up. And when the time is right, I am going to go to medical school. So in the meantime, he secured a job as a laboratory assistant in 1930 with Dr. Alfred Blalock at Vanderbilt University. And this is Vivien Thomas as a young man. So he went to work with this man over here, Dr. Alfred Blalock, who again I said was a very prominent figure, a big doctor. And Alfred Blalock, he was an American surgeon, and he was most noted for his work on the medical condition of shock, as well as tetralogy of Fallot, commonly known as blue baby syndrome. So he was very famous for his work and treatment in this heart disease that occurred in babies. They called it blue baby syndrome. And what it is, it's a birth defect that affects normal blood flow through the heart. It happens when a baby's heart does not form correctly as the baby grows and develops in the mother's womb during pregnancy. So this is a very critical condition, and if not treated, it puts a baby in jeopardy. And here's a picture of what it looks like on the heart. And then this is a picture of the baby, and the reason why they call it blue baby syndrome is because of this condition, the blood is not properly oxygenated, and this causes a baby's skin and their lips to become blue. And like I said, if left untreated, there will be serious complications for this baby. So that is what Dr. Alfred Blalock is famous for. So what does this have to do with Vivien Thomas? Well, going back just a little bit, as I mentioned, Vivien Thomas went to work with Alfred Blalock as a laboratory technician. And while they were at Vanderbilt, they had some pretty groundbreaking research. They found into the causes of hemorrhagic and traumatic stroke. And this work later evolved into research on Crust syndrome and saved the lives of thousands of soldiers in the battlefield of World War II. But then this is really where the magic happened. So Vivien Thomas, again, no formal education, just a lab technician, was working alongside with Dr. Blalock, and they started doing experimental work in vascular and cardiac surgery. And this was a time where surgery on the heart, it was considered taboo. People didn't really do that. And then Dr. Blalock got offered a position at Johns Hopkins University. And he said, I'm only going to go if Vivien Thomas can come with me. That's how much he trusted Vivien Thomas. And that's how much Vivien Thomas, that's how important he was to Dr. Blalock's work. So then they went over to Johns Hopkins University. And together, that's where they developed the procedure and treatment for tetralogy of Fallot, or blue baby syndrome. So that procedure I just told you about, that Alfred Blalock was famous for, people don't realize that majority of the ideas, majority of the work, it came from Vivien Thomas. Remember, a man who was not a doctor, he was just a laboratory technician. And it's really a crazy story. I'm not the best storyteller, so the best place to really see how remarkable this story is check out this movie. It's called Something the Lord Made. It was made by HBO, and it really gives you an idea of how crazy this was, right? So it sounds like a good story, right? What's the problem with this story? It doesn't matter. He didn't become a doctor or anything like that. But he's famous. He helps save lives. What's the problem with that? Well, this is the problem. He never got the full credit that he deserves. Always dreamt of being a doctor, but he couldn't be. And this is where it comes back. When I said heart surgery and cryptocurrency, what does it have to do with each other? The reason I made the connection is because when you use cryptocurrency, you have the option of being your own bank. Not saying that you have to be your own bank, but you have the option. You can keep your money in a real bank. You can keep it on your own private wallet. You can keep it on an exchange. And this was the tragedy of Vivien Thomas. You might wonder, he's so smart. He said he would go to medical school. He pushed it off. Why didn't he go? This is the reason. He kept his money in Nashville banks. That's where he lived. And right, like as I said, during the stock market crash, he said, I'm going to wait, I'm going to save up more money, and then I'm going to go to medical school. But Nashville's banks failed. And with their failure, all of his money was wiped out. And this, he had to abandon his dreams and plans of going to medical school, and he had to take this low-paying job. And you might think, that's so crazy. All his money was in the bank and it's just gone. How can that happen? Just to make it a little more relatable to you today, let's say you wanted to become a doctor or maybe a dentist or anything, maybe a lawyer, and you saved $100,000, $200,000, you put it in a bank, you wake up one morning and they told you, sorry, it's gone. We don't have it. That's exactly what happened to Vivien Thomas. And to top that off, what made it also so, sad for him, is that in 1976, Johns Hopkins University, they presented Thomas with an honorary doctorate, right? And because of certain restrictions, he received an honorary doctor of laws rather than a medical doctorate. Because again, remember, he wasn't really a doctor. And then due to his lack of an official medical degree, he was never allowed to operate on a living patient. And this man reached so much success. As I said, there's movies about him. There's awards named after him. There's organizations named after him. There's buildings named after him. But he didn't get to live out his dream because the hard-earned money that he had that would have brought him to medical school, and he no doubt, of course, would have excelled in medical school, what prevented him was the money in his bank was wiped out. And I know you're wondering, how does that happen? Well, let's talk about banking. What is a bank, really? So a bank, they're not just holding your money for free. They are a business. This is the trade-off when it comes to a bank. You say, I will let you hold my money and handle it, and in return, I'll get an annual percentage. Because what a bank does is when they get your money, they don't just keep it in the bank account. They're a business, so they take your money, they lend it out to people, and they make investments. So if you give them $1,000, you might think you have $1,000 in your bank, but maybe you have $100 or $200. The rest of the money they take out and they invest it. And it used to be a good trade-off. Back in the 60s and 70s, banks were giving returns of maybe 5 or 6%. That's almost equivalent today with the S&P 500, which is, people dream to get 5 to 7% a year. Banks, it used to be standard. But today, if you keep your money in a savings account, you'll know that the average return per year in a savings account, it's 0.09%. It's not even 1%. It doesn't matter if you have $50,000 or $100,000. So that original deal, it's not really worth it as much as it used to be. So when it comes to banks, right, you can say, okay, I do understand they're a business. The deal is I give you money and you give me in return, but there is a risk that you might not handle the money correctly. You might lose it in investments. And then, as we know, in bad times such as the Great Depression, when banks fail, the money that you gave to them, technically it's not really yours. And that's what happened with something like Cyprus in Greece, and I think that was in 2013. The economy was so bad that the banks, they closed their doors, and people were trying to go to the banks to take out their money, and they couldn't because the banks didn't have the money for them. And even the people that eventually got their money, they had to wait for a long time. What if you need money to pay your rent? What if you needed it for a medical bill? You couldn't get it. So people forget that the Great Depression wasn't that long ago. It was in the 1930s, and we see bad things economically happening all over the world. Even more recently, like I showed you with Cyprus, and then you see the hyperinflation in Venezuela. They say man learns from history, but it seems that we don't really. People have this idea that it can never happen to you. It can happen anywhere. Any country can go under. But something good we do have in America is we have FDIC insurance. And what this says is that a bank that is FDIC insured, if you have under $250,000 in that account, it's guaranteed, even if the banks fail. So the FDIC program, it was established in 1933 in response to many bank failures. So that was right at the time of the Great Depression. And over time, we do see that the FDIC, they keep to their word. They're able to pay back money when it's needed. But the truth is, we've never seen an economic crash since as big as the Great Depression, especially if you're living in America today. But other places in the world, it gets really bad. So what happens if we do, and I pray we never do, but if we do have something similar to the Great Depression or something even worse, what is to guarantee that you put your money in a bank, and even though the bank went under and they technically don't owe you your money back, even legally, they don't owe you the money back. That was the deal. You gave it to them. They give you an interest rate, which is very low today, and they can get to play around with your money. But in a true economic crash that would happen like the Great Depression, will the FDIC, will they really be able to pay back all of the customers? So I don't know, and I hope they do. And here's a chart on the screen just to show you how money really works in banking. It's called fractional reserves. Whenever you put money in a bank, we'll keep it very simple. Let's say you put $100 into your bank account. Your bank account doesn't actually have $100 in it. It might show it on a screen, but what the bank does is they might keep maybe $10 of the $100 and they'll loan out the other $90. They'll invest it, they'll loan it out to banks. So now you have the $90 or 90% of the original deposit, it's loaned out. Now what that institution or bank does is they do the same thing. People keep lending out money and investing it, but claiming that the full amount of money is in their banks. That's why if everyone in the world, or not even in the world, if everyone in America went to one bank, let's say, JP Morgan or Wells Fargo, every day they went and they asked for 20% of their money. I'm not even saying they're going to their bank and saying, give me all my money. Everyone just went and said, let me have 10 or 20% of my money. The bank won't actually have your money because it's not actually in there. It's loaned out to other people. It's in investments. This is called a bank run. A bank run is when everyone gets together and they go to a bank and they say, give me your money, just to prove that the bank actually holds it. Now with cryptocurrency, the reason why this could have been important for Vivien Thomas is because he could have had the option of being his own bank and holding his own money. He didn't have to trust it to a third party that can go out of business, which is exactly what happened to them. And the good thing is, you don't have to use cryptocurrency. You don't have to use a bank. The whole point is that you have the option. That's all we're asking for, that you have the option. Even in today's world, people trust banks. And I use a bank. I'm not some conspiracy theorist. I use a bank. But it might be important for people also to hold some of their wealth, some of their money in assets that they get to control. And that could be something like cryptocurrency. That also could be something such as gold or a different asset that you truly have power over. And this also can apply even in cryptocurrency, because people think that when you hold cryptocurrency, you automatically are your own bank, but that's not true. If you keep your money on an exchange, it's the same concept as keeping it in a bank. An exchange could get hacked. An exchange might be using your cryptocurrency to invest in other projects and lend it out. But the truth is, we don't know what's going on with cryptocurrency or the exchanges. So that's why there's this man, Trace Meyer, very popular figure in the crypto community, cryptocurrency space. Every year around the beginning of January, he has this event called Proof of Keys. And what he says is that everyone should go onto their exchange, even if they're planning on using the exchange in the future. And just on that day, everyone should withdraw their cryptocurrency. And the reason he says this is to prove that the cryptocurrency exchange are actually holding your money. Just like we saw with banks, and it's not a secret, we know that banks don't actually hold our money. They have it there on a ledger, on a paper that it shows I have $1,000, but 90% of the $1,000 is actually not in the bank. It's loaned out somewhere. It's in an investment. So Trace Meyer wants to show that exchanges can possibly do the same thing. So proof of keys every year, take out your money, see if they actually hold it for you. Now, the only way to guarantee that you hold your own cryptocurrency, that you are your own bank, you'll need a private wallet, something such as a Ledger Nano, a hardware wallet, or maybe a paper or steel wallet, where no one has access to it but you. Instead of keeping all of your money in a bank, maybe you keep some money on a ledger or a hardware wallet so that you know in a true economic depression. Something, again, like I said, the Great Depression wasn't that long ago. We have Cyprus, not also in 2013, I believe, and then we have hyperinflation around the world in places such as Venezuela. This gives you the option. Remember, I'm not saying you have to do it, it's just an option, and this is an option that Dr. Vivien Thomas never had. So if you were wondering what the title was, cryptocurrency and heart surgery, that was the connection. Very famous man in our time, but he was really short-ended because of the current system, because of the banking system at his time. He never really got to live out his true full potential. And again, this story, I'm telling you, it's a remarkable story. Check out this movie, Something the Lord Made by HBO. Very amazing movie. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and if you want to hear content similar to it, subscribe to my channel so that every day when I make a new video, you will get a notification. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you next time.